I was just passing and I saw the door open and I thought somebody might be up to no good. Solving problems was your responsibility.
I'm absolutely sure that I've seen you.
They say the most dangerous place in Britain isn't London. It's a village with flower shows, polite neighbors, and a murder every single week. That's not a joke. That's Midsomer Murders, the series that fooled millions into thinking they were about to watch a cozy Sunday drama and then dropped a corpse on the front lawn. When it premiered on March 21st, 1997, no one expected the storm it would unleash. It was the brainchild of writer Anthony Horowitz, based on the novels of Caroline Graham, who took something very British, rural gentility, and twisted it into psychological warfare. The show dared to say what few others did: evil doesn't live in dark alleys, it hides behind lace curtains. And at the center of it all stood one man, John Nettles. Before Midsomer, Nettles was already a familiar face from Bergerac, another detective drama, but Midsomer Murders transformed him from an actor into a national monument. His Detective Chief Inspector Tom Barnaby was unlike anything television had seen. No guns, no shouting, no quick edits, just quiet intelligence wrapped in a gentleman's calm. He didn't fight crime with fists, he dismantled it with empathy and precision. When Barnaby walked into a crime scene, it felt as if the room held its breath. He'd glance at a photo frame, a misplaced teacup, a nervous twitch, and you knew he'd already solved half the case. That subtle authority became the heartbeat of the series. For 14 relentless years, Nettles carried Midsomer through more than 200 murders, poisonings, stabbings, electrocutions, drownings, all staged against an idyllic English backdrop. The horror was almost poetic, and Nettles gave it credibility. He was every viewer's anchor, calm when things turned grotesque, human when others lost faith. Behind the scenes, his work ethic was legendary. Crew members recall that he rarely missed a line, never broke character, and treated every extra like a co-star. His grounded nature mirrored Barnaby's own, a man of principle, navigating a world gone absurd. And yet, after 81 episodes in 2011, he stepped away. There was no scandal, no burnout, just a man choosing to leave while his legacy stood untarnished. The farewell episode, Fit for Murder, closed with Barnaby's quiet retirement, a simple wave, a door closing in silence. Viewers cried not because a show ended, but because an era did. Today, when you hear that eerie flute theme, you don't picture the killer or the victim. You picture John Nettles, trench coat billowing, walking through misty lanes toward another secret buried under English soil. He wasn't just a detective, he was the conscience of Midsomer, the calm voice reminding us that even in the most beautiful places, the human heart remains the darkest mystery of all.
In a show built on murder, there had to be someone who reminded us of life. Someone who could stand in the doorway after the latest crime scene, smile gently, and make the audience feel that beyond the blood and betrayal, people still loved, laughed, and ate dinner together. That person was Jane Wymark. As Joyce Barnaby, wife of Detective Chief Inspector Tom Barnaby, she was the quiet heartbeat of Midsomer Murders. She didn't carry a badge or chase killers, she carried the humanity that kept the series from drowning in darkness. Every time Tom returned home from another twisted case, Joyce was there cooking, hosting, worrying, or simply listening. Her warmth gave balance to the cold logic of investigation. Before Midsomer, Jane Wymark was already respected for her theater and television work. Poldark, Pie in the Sky, but nothing cemented her in pop culture like this role. For 14 years, from 1997 to 2011, she became the symbol of resilience and domestic grace. Joyce wasn't written as a detective's wife stereotype. She had her own arcs. She joined local clubs, got caught up in festivals, art exhibitions, and even a few dangerous misadventures of her own. Fans love those moments. The ordinary woman stumbling into extraordinary danger because Joyce reacted the way we would. No melodrama. Just fear, resolve, and the occasional perfectly delivered one-liner. Her chemistry with John Nettles was effortless. They looked and spoke like a real couple, the kind who'd been married for decades and still teased each other. It wasn't scripted affection, it was lived-in comfort. While Tom dissected motives, Joyce embodied empathy. She was the human cost of every tragedy, the person who reminded viewers that behind each murder lay a family broken apart. Behind the camera, Jane Wymark carried the same steadiness. Colleagues recall her as patient, warm, and razor-sharp, the emotional glue of the early cast. She rarely sought the spotlight, yet everyone felt her presence. Even crew members said, when Jane was on set, the energy softened. When she left alongside John Nettles in 2011, it wasn't just the end of a partnership, it was the end of home. Midsomer suddenly felt colder, lonelier. The kitchen light that once flickered with warmth had gone out. In later interviews, Wymark said she was proud that Joyce wasn't flashy. She was real. And that's exactly why fans still miss her. Because in a world filled with death, deception, and chaos, Jane Wymark's Joyce Barnaby gave us the rarest thing of all, a sense of normalcy that felt like hope.
If John Nettles was the calm wisdom of Midsomer Murders, then Daniel Casey was its restless energy, the spark of youth in a world full of secrets and corpses. When the series began in 1997, viewers met Detective Sergeant Gavin Troy, a sharp-suited, slightly overeager sidekick to DCI Tom Barnaby. He was young, ambitious, and at times hilariously clumsy, the kind of officer who'd step into a puddle at a crime scene or question the wrong suspect, but always bounce back with raw determination. He wasn't just learning about murder, he was learning about human nature, and under Barnaby's watchful eye, so were we. Daniel Casey wasn't a household name when he got the role. He had just finished small parts in British television when the audition for Midsomer Murders came along. What he brought to the role was something that couldn't be written: sincerity. Troy wasn't meant to be comic relief, but Casey made him endearing without turning him into a caricature. His nervous smiles and earnest mistakes made the show feel alive. Fans still remember the playful friction between Barnaby and Troy, the generational tug-of-war. Barnaby was methodical and old school, Troy impulsive and skeptical. Their banter wasn't scripted humor, it was chemistry. The audience saw a father-son dynamic emerge over time, the mentor teaching patience, the pupil teaching optimism. Casey's Troy also represented something crucial for the series' balance. Amid all the village oddities and aristocratic eccentricities, he reacted like us. When the murders got weird, and they often did, Troy's disbelief grounded the story. "What kind of place is this?" he'd mutter, and viewers nodded in unison. Behind the camera, Daniel Casey's enthusiasm was infectious. He'd stay late on set, rehearse with crew members, and crack jokes to ease the long shooting days. Even John Nettles admitted that working with Casey reminded him why he loved acting. "He brought lightness to darkness," Nettles once said. After 6 seasons and countless cases, Casey decided to leave in 2003. His exit was emotional, not explosive. The final moments between Troy and Barnaby felt like a real goodbye, a mentor letting go of his student. There were no grand speeches, just understanding. In the years since, Daniel Casey appeared in EastEnders, Coronation Street, and even stage productions, but fans still call him Troy, because in a show defined by murder, he brought innocence, proof that not everyone in Midsomer was jaded or corrupted. Troy started as a rookie, stumbled through chaos, and left as a man. And maybe that's why we still remember him, not for how he solved the murders, but for how he grew through them. Every detective show has its corpses, but Midsomer Murders had something different. A man who treated those corpses like they still mattered. That man was Dr. George Bullard, played by Barry Jackson, the unflappable pathologist with a twinkle in his eye and a joke in his pocket, standing ankle-deep in death, but somehow making it feel bearable. For over a decade, from 1997 to 2011, Barry Jackson played Bullard as if he were part scientist, part therapist, and part philosopher. He didn't just cut open bodies, he helped Barnaby cut through lies. While others flinched, Bullard observed, measured, and smiled softly. His lines weren't grand or showy, but his presence radiated reassurance. When Bullard entered the scene, you could exhale. He brought logic to chaos. Barry Jackson's approach to the role was meticulous. He studied real pathology techniques to make every scene authentic. But what made him unforgettable wasn't accuracy, it was empathy. He'd deliver grim details with a gentleness that almost felt sacred. "Time of death between midnight and 2, he'd say, eyes kind, voice calm. And suddenly, death didn't seem so monstrous. It was part of life, something to be understood, not feared. Off-screen, Barry Jackson was exactly the same, a quiet gentleman known for his dry wit and unwavering professionalism. Castmates often said he was the calm in the morgue, a man who could lighten the heaviest day with a single smile. John Nettles once recalled that during long night shoots, Barry would bring in flasks of tea for the crew, saying, "If we're working among the dead, we should stay warm among the living." Before Midsomer, Jackson had already carved out a long career, from Doctor Who to A Touch of Frost, but Midsomer made him iconic. His Bullard wasn't a background character. He was the quiet spine of the series. Every murder that tore through Midsomer's piece found closure on his table, and in a show where death was constant, his humanity became the audience's comfort. When Barry Jackson passed away in 2013, tributes flooded in from around the world. Co-stars described him as the kindest soul in a dark business. Fans mourned not just an actor, but the conscience of a show obsessed with death. In Midsomer Murders, Dr. George Bullard never solved the crimes, but he gave dignity to every victim. He was the man who faced death every day and still chose to smile. When John Nettles walked off the set of Midsomer Murders in 2011, the world held its breath. How do you replace the irreplaceable? For 14 years, Nettles was Midsomer, his calm voice, his commanding walk, his moral certainty. Fans feared the show would die with his departure. But then came a new face, quiet, steady, almost familiar, Neil Dudgeon, stepping into the role of DCI John Barnaby, cousin to Tom Barnaby. It was a clever transition, not a reboot, but a bloodline. Same family, new generation, yet the weight on Dudgeon's shoulders was immense. The viewers didn't want a new detective, they wanted their detective back. But instead of copying Nettles, Dudgeon did something bold. He reinvented Barnaby. Neil Dudgeon's Barnaby was less formal, more self-deprecating, a man with a twinkle of irony in his eyes. Where John Nettles brought gravitas, Dudgeon brought humanity. He cracked small jokes, stumbled into domestic chaos, and still somehow solved murders with quiet brilliance. His Barnaby smiled more, sighed more, felt more, a subtle shift that reintroduced warmth to a show that had grown darker over time. Off-screen, Dudgeon was remarkably grounded. Born in Yorkshire, trained at RADA, he'd spent decades honing his craft across theater and television. Life of Riley, Roman's Empire, The Nativity. When he joined Midsomer Murders, he didn't chase fame, he chased authenticity. He studied Nettles' rhythm, not to mimic it, but to understand the soul of Midsomer, the moral clarity that made it timeless. His first episode, Death in the Slow Lane, aired in 2011, and the reaction was mixed at first. Some fans resisted change, others saw something refreshing, but by his third season, the verdict was clear. Neil Dudgeon wasn't the new guy anymore. He was Barnaby, period. Under his watch, Midsomer Murders adapted to the modern world. Sharper editing, younger detectives, and stories tackling greed, obsession, and class conflict in 21st century Britain. Yet it never lost its charm. Dudgeon made sure the DNA of the series, irony, intelligence, and decency, stayed intact. In interviews, he's humble about it. "I never tried to replace John," he said. "I just tried to protect what he built." And he did. Over 15 years later, Dudgeon still walks those village roads, solving crimes among cat shows and cricket fields, keeping the legend alive. Because Midsomer Murders was never about one man, it was about the spirit he left behind. And Neil Dudgeon made sure that spirit still breathes, still investigates, still endures. By the time Fiona Dolman arrived in Midsomer Murders in 2011, the world had already buried hundreds of fictional bodies. Villages had turned sinister, vicars had confessed, and the Barnaby family name had become a legend. But what the show needed now wasn't just another character, it needed a heartbeat. And Fiona Dolman delivered exactly that. Playing Sarah Barnaby, wife of DCI John Barnaby Neil Dudgeon, Dolman brought something the series had been missing since Jane Wymark's departure, a new kind of warmth. Where Joyce Barnaby embodied tradition and stability, Sarah represented evolution, a woman juggling her own career, motherhood, and the chaos of living with a detective who keeps finding corpses in the garden. Dolman's Sarah wasn't written as a background spouse, she was present. She challenged her husband, teased him, rolled her eyes at his paperwork, and grounded him when the job's darkness crept too close. Their chemistry felt real, less like television marriage, more like partnership. In many ways, Sarah Barnaby reintroduced humanity into a series that could have easily become mechanical after 20 seasons. Through her, the audience saw a softer side of John Barnaby, a detective who laughs, worries about school runs, and still rushes off to a crime scene mid-dinner. Off-camera, Fiona Dolman mirrored her on-screen compassion. In 2019, she ran the London Marathon for Hospice UK, raising funds in honor of her late mother, a gesture that resonated deeply with fans. She's spoken openly about the emotional toll of grief and resilience, reflecting the same authenticity that defines her character. "I think Sarah reminds people that love and loss can live side by side," Dolman once said. Her presence changed the rhythm of the show. She made Midsomer Murders feel modern again, not through technology or tropes, but through truth. She portrayed a woman who wasn't idealized or ornamental, but human, tired, witty, occasionally exasperated, yet fiercely loyal. And that humanity kept the Barnaby household alive. Behind the smiles and Sunday roasts, Sarah represents continuity, proof that the show's moral center never vanished, it just evolved. When she's on screen, she doesn't just support the detective, she supports the world of Midsomer itself. More than 2 decades after the first murder in Badger's Drift, Fiona Dolman stands as a symbol of everything the series became, enduring, empathetic, and quietly powerful. Because beneath the murders, the mayhem, and the endless tea breaks, Midsomer Murders has always been about people, and Fiona Dolman made sure it still had a heart that beats.